Welcome to Bouncing Back. Today we will explore a global view of life at Temple. Some people call America a nation of immigrants and the land of opportunity. For many Americans, their personal histories begin with a journey across the sea to a land that promised freedom, safety, and opportunity. Some of us made that journey ourselves, but not everyone who comes to this country is here to stay. Some are here to learn, to explore, to create, and to return to their home countries with something they could not get at home. For the curious, courageous international students of Temple University, the journey to this country presents unique challenges and opportunities. We are here today to help these students get the guidance they need as they face the challenges of life in a country that isn't their home. Let's get started. Ooka is a senior media studies and production major here at Temple. Like many international students, he has adapted an English name, so he's also known as Richard Lee. Born in Dalian, a seaside city in China, Richard says it reminds him of Boston. He struggled with feelings of isolation and loneliness when he came to the United States. Struggling with the language and a new culture, Richard eventually fought through his difficulties and has thrived here at Temple. He has many roles on campus, including a position on the Temple Student Government here in the main campus program board and an international residence coordinator as a member of the Temple Student Police. Richard, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Lisa.
Oh, I'm thrilled. When you came to me and you said, I really want to do a show and talk about this, I thought it was a great opportunity to really talk about being an international student. So tell me about, you were sharing a story with me that you were once here when you came over the first time, you were in the airport for 7 hours. Can you tell me what that was like?
Well, probably because of ticket problem. That's my mother's problem, sorry. But yeah, she booked the tickets and I had to stay in the airport from midnight till 7, 8-ish just to find a cab and go to the school. So I had to stay in the airport for 7, 8 hours, and it was very painful actually, because I don't know anybody. I have to just stare at the computer screen and try to get connected with the Wi-Fi there, and then try to talk with my parents, my friends from home. So it was the first 7 hours I was here in America.
So the first 7 hours were probably they were painful, you said, but extraordinarily scary and overwhelming. So how do you overcome that? You know, now you're leaving the airport and you take a cab to Temple.
Yeah, I have to be honest that for the first couple of months, even first 2 years, I was pretty alone, and I did things myself. I stay in the dorm most of the times. I still talk with my parents like almost every day via those social media or Skype, and then just try to pretend I was still in China actually. Yeah, because I couldn't find a place where I could go or find a friend that I can talk to here. But then I mean, it's like when you walk, you have to have 2 steps, and then you can move, right? The first step for me is to come to America, but the second step is actually you have to get involved. You have to participate in activities, and then eventually find new friends. And then I actually joined Chinese Student Scholar Association, where I find a whole group of people who are similar to me. And then that's the first step that I could actually find friends and talk, and then get away from computer and virtual stuff. Yeah.
So for 2 years, you said you felt like you were still holding on, like living in China, but living here.
Yeah.
Tell us about what it was like when you first came here. You know, I'm sure you did a lot of research, and you probably read a lot about, and you've probably watched movies and thought, well, this is America. And you know, what was your first impression when you first came?
I saw the intro you just did, and it was actually the first the thing I thought before I came here. But the problem is, I thought it would be totally different from my home country. But when I came here, it's not that different, which
Interesting.
actually scares me. Because I was expecting something like completely different, but then it's just everybody is doing almost the same thing as they do in China, and it's just it just scares me when I find that there's no difference between people around the world.
Well, I love that you just said that there's no difference between people. People are genuinely good people, which so
Yeah.
you came here. How did you embrace, I mean, I know you said you went and you found people who were, your same culture. How did you embrace our culture? Did you do anything? Did you find a friend? Did somebody say, come on, Richard, you'll be my friend and we'll go and we'll explore Philadelphia, or I'll show you the Liberty Bell? Did you do anything like that?
Yeah, that's actually the difference, but it takes time for me to actually see the difference. And I did make some American friends after a while, and then they are really welcoming, and they're really outgoing, because in countries like China we are a little bit more towards inner-going, and they throw parties a lot. They take people all around the city and talk a lot, and it's enjoyable. It's enjoyable to have them.
So this is an exciting time for you now, right? You're a senior, so put your freshman hat on, and if there's a freshman student that's watching this show, what's your best piece of advice that you would give to a freshman who is new to this country, new to Temple University?
I want to say, first of all, everybody who had studied abroad or who is studying abroad has been through the loneliness themselves. Like, this is part of the experience. So don't feel nervous or scared about being lonely, because many of us feel the same way. But then also, after a few days, when you get away from jet lag, just go out and be involved and talk with people, and eventually you will see the difference, and you will see that people are very welcoming to you. So, yeah.
Okay, well, we have to wrap it up, but I just want to say, I guess I want to touch on the loneliness for a second, because I think loneliness can make people feel very isolated. Is there a resource here at Temple that you would recommend that they reach out to, and then
I think on the student side, we have a lot of student organizations that have, like I mentioned, Chinese Student Scholar Association.
Okay.
We also have International Student Association, all the different orgs that have people who are similar to you. And then you can also talk to the staffs from the Office of International Affairs,
Okay.
because they are dealing with all the international students like every day.
Great.
So.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm excited that it was your idea to do this show, and it's great. And I hope that if people are out there feeling lonely, they will reach out and go to all the resources. Thank you.
Thank you.
Martyn Miller has served as the director of the Temple University International Student and Scholar Services for over 15 years. Martyn doesn't just manage the International Studies program, he has lived it. Martyn was raised in Syria and Lebanon before coming to the United States to study English literature. Martyn has held local, regional, and national leadership roles in NASFA, the Association of International Educators, and the Pennsylvania Council on International Education. Martyn, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
It. So you heard a little bit about Richard's story. What would be the best piece of advice that you could give to all Temple students or international students that might feel lonely or feeling overwhelmed when they first come?
I think Richard gave the perfect first thing the student should do, and that's to seek out a student organization that would include students from the same national or ethnic background. And in his case, he joined CSSA. That opened a whole bunch of doors to him, and now we've got enough organizations that other students, regardless of their background, can find someplace where they would belong, and then to begin, if you will, to unfold.
How many students do we have on campus that are?
We have over 3,000 international students now from about 120 different countries.
Wow. So it's your job to make sure that they all have a very successful experience here?
That's what I'm told I'm supposed to do, yes.
So tell us what you do to make sure that you're really successful at your job and that the students have a great experience.
Bringing the student here begins from encouraging them to apply for admission, getting them to get through the admission process, which unfortunately is not very easy. Once they've been admitted, we've got to send them a whole bunch of immigration documents. They use those to apply for a visa. Once they've gone through all that kind of hell and the stress of all of that, then they finally get here. Once they're here, we begin their experience with a week-long orientation process. We put all of the new students into one of our dormitories, have them live together. We have several, if you will, returning students living in the dorms also, both international and American, so that we give them a week-long, easy opportunity to get to know people, to get to know the environment. During that week, we take them down to Philadelphia. We take them sometimes off to the beach if it's good weather. Take them to Hershey Park, apparently. They like that one quite a bit. And we also take them shopping to our more famous shopping centers like King of Prussia, where they spend all the money that they're supposed to have for 4 years.
Well, King of Prussia, that in itself is a whole experience.
It is, yes.
So I would imagine, and maybe you can speak to this for us, freshman versus being a senior are completely two different experiences, you know?
Not necessarily, because
Okay.
the freshman is going to experience the same sort of acclimatization problems that the transfer student would have. Now, if you're coming to Temple from another school in the United States, that's a little bit different. But if you're transferring from a non-U.S. university, you're going to experience the same sorts of culture shock and the same sorts of needs to learn the environment before you can become successful here.
So Richard's a senior. What advice
Yeah.
would you give Richard for, what's his next step? Does Richard look for a job in the United States? Is that what we hope for?
Yeah, normally Richard in his senior year will be working very closely with our career center and any other professional society here within the college, the School of Media and Communication, to seek employment. Once he gets it, then he has to unfortunately work with his new employer for visa papers. And employment visas are much more difficult than student visas, but it's something that the international student knows he or she has to go through.
When we do this show, we've always talked about overcoming adversity, and the goal is to hopefully that the students that are watching it, whether they themselves are going through the adversity, will be kinder, nicer to the students. So what advice could you give to the American student that may get frustrated with the student in his class, or how do you embrace it? A lot of people might not understand how maybe they're intimidated to go and have a conversation with them.
Patience, and a little bit more patience. And then once you've gotten over the patience part, actually speak to the student. Richard gave a very, very good commencement speech this year. And in his commencement speech, he talked about spending just 2 minutes of time with your international student. Take that 2 minutes, get to know the person. Again, using Richard as an example, he was talking about how people cannot pronounce his name. And if you take just 2 minutes of time to practice his name, it does become easy to pronounce, and then you get to know him just through that practice of using the name. So give the student time to introduce himself to you. Give the student time to get to know you, and then you can start to get to know them a lot better.
I think that's excellent advice. As an adjunct professor here, I know I was faced with that the first time I taught public speaking. I had a lot of international students in my class, and I think now that I've met you and met Richard, I would handle it completely different, where I would maybe walk up to the student privately and say, what's the correct enunciation of your name? And so is there any other advice you could give to myself, an adjunct professor, and other professors here, other than just patience, if we see a student that is struggling with the academics?
Well, there are lots of resources on campus. One of the most important and the first thing you might want to do is refer the student to what's called the CARE team. It's a team of faculty and staff on campus that comprises several different offices, and their function is to make sure that all of the students have a successful experience, and faculty refer students to them if they find them in emotional distress, academic distress, and the CARE team reaches out to the students. If it's an international student, the CARE team would reach out to me. And between our two offices, we would go to the student and make sure that he or she is getting the support that he needs. In addition to the CARE team, we've got an excellent Tuttleman Counseling Services. This is a little tricky for us because international students tend not to want to go to counseling. They think of it as a negative part of education, if you will. Once they get to counseling, however, they find out that there really is a need for it, especially overcoming culture shock, overcoming loneliness, as we started with, overcoming fear. They also have other resources where they can practice new study skills. The university has recently put in place a great support system through the Writing Center. They've actually hired somebody on staff now specifically for international students. Other departments have added English as a second language sections of classes, and we would encourage students to sign up for those. But basically, the university itself is trying to put into place many different offices and staff to be here for the international students. So the biggest thing is the faculty should learn about these resources so they can refer the students to those resources.
Excellent. Thank you for all that advice. I myself will become a better professor now because of doing this show. I think that we did the great advice, and I think what we all need to remember is kindness and patience. So thank you again for being on our show today.
Thank you for featuring Richard on the show.
As someone born and raised in the United States, it's easy to take the intricacies, contradiction, and joys of American life for granted. For international students, no matter the duration of their stay, this place can feel like an alien world with different languages, cultural norms, and ways of life that can be confusing, lonely, and even frightening. It's important to remember that people have it within themselves to create homes, to adapt, and to thrive in the most challenging of environments. I wish our international students all the best as they bounce back from their adjustment periods and make the most of their time in our democratic experiment we call home. Thank you for watching. We look forward to seeing you next time on Bouncing Back.